My brother thought I had nothing. No savings, no plan, no ground to stand on. He had been telling that story about me for 3 years, and after a while, I think he even believed it. The thing about being underestimated by the person who watched you grow up is that it has a particular kind of sting. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady and cold, like a window left open in November. My name is Nadia Westbrook. I am 31 years old. And the morning my older brother Derek changed the locks on the house we both lived in and left my belongings in 3 black garbage bags on the front step, I already knew exactly what was going to happen to him. I did not know the day. I did not know the hour. But I knew. Because what Derek never understood, what he was too certain of himself to bother learning, was that the one person he had spent 3 years dismissing was the same person holding the pin above the thing he had built his entire future on. He called me a burden at dinner the week before, said it plainly, with his fork still in his hand and his girlfriend nodding beside him. Said I had been living off his goodwill long enough and that it was time for me to find somewhere else to be. What he did not know was what I had done quietly, the night before he changed those locks. And his bank called him at 6 a.m. to tell him. Before I tell you what that phone call said and what happened in the weeks after, I want to ask you something. If you have ever been made to feel small by someone who should have known better, stay with me. Leave a comment below when that moment comes. I want to hear from you. To understand any of this, you need to understand what our mother left behind. Not in terms of grief, there was plenty of that, but in terms of paper. Agreements, obligations, things signed in quiet offices that most people never read twice. Our mother, Carol Westbrook, died of a slow heart failure 18 months before any of this happened. She was 63. She had been sick for 4 years. And in those 4 years, Derek had largely handled the visible things, the appointments, the grocery runs, the phone calls to her insurance company when the bills started arriving in stacks. He had done those things genuinely, I believe that. He loved our mother. But he had also borrowed against her name to keep his landscaping business alive while he was spending his weekends driving her to treatments. And somewhere in that stretch of time, the two things, the love and the debt, had gotten tangled together in his head until he could not separate them. I had been the quieter presence during that time. I worked remotely, software documentation for a mid-sized logistics firm, and I could do it from anywhere. So I did it from our mother's kitchen table, mostly. While Derek handled the large and visible things, I handled the paperwork. The hospital intake forms, the insurance appeals, the estate documents when it became clear that appeals were running out. Our mother had a lawyer she trusted. His name was Gerald Finch. He had known her since before Derek and I were born. When she began drafting her end-of-life documents, she did it with Gerald, and she did it carefully. She named Derek the primary beneficiary of the house. The house was the main asset, a 3-bedroom in a suburb called Hartwell that she had owned outright for 11 years. She wanted Derek to have it. She told me that plainly, and I did not argue. It made sense. He had been more present in the physical daily way. What she also did, quietly with Gerald's guidance, was name me executor of her estate. I did not fully understand what that meant until Gerald explained it to me after the funeral. He sat me down in his office with a cup of tea I did not touch and walked me through the documents 1 page at a time. Gerald was the kind of lawyer who never speaks faster than the person across the desk can absorb, and he watched my face as he read each clause aloud. The executor, Gerald explained, held authority over the estate's ongoing financial obligations. That included any debts or guarantees tied to estate assets during the settlement period. Derek's business loan, a commercial line of credit he had taken through Hartwell Community Bank, collateralized against the house before our mother died, had been co-signed under terms that named the estate as a secondary guarantor. I want to be clear about how that loan existed. Derek had not been reckless. In the 2nd year of our mother's illness, when the medical bills were arriving faster than either of them had planned for, Derek had taken out the credit line to keep his 3 employees paid. He was covering their wages some months out of his own pocket because the business was slower in winter and the costs of treatment had eaten into his reserves. He did this without complaint and without asking me to split it. I only learned the shape of it later. From Gerald. Derek's debt was, in part, the debt of a son who had refused to let his mother's care slip. I held that fact in my mind even during the worst of what came later. I did not use it as an excuse for him, but I held it, because the full truth of a person is rarely clean. What Derek had not done, could not have done perhaps, given that he was also managing grief and a business and a girlfriend who had opinions about the future, was read the fine print on what he had signed. He had signed what Gerald put in front of him during the estate process, the way most people sign documents they trust someone else to have read. He trusted that the executor stuff was Nadia's department and that nothing in it would ever affect him directly, which meant that I, as executor, held the authority to notify the bank that the estate was withdrawing that guarantee. I did not know this on the day of the funeral. I did not know it the first month I moved into the house after the estate settled, when Derek offered me the spare room in a tone that suggested he was doing me a significant personal favor. I did not know it the first Christmas we spent there together, or the spring after that, or the summer his girlfriend Melissa began making pointed remarks about square footage and privacy. I learned it 5 months before the garbage bags appeared on the front step, during a routine call with Gerald about closing out a remaining estate account. He mentioned it the way you mention something you assume the other person already knows. You are still listed as the guarantor contact on Derek's line of credit, Nadia. If the estate ever closes completely, you would need to formally step down from that position. Just something to keep in mind. I kept it in mind. I did not tell Derek. I want to be honest about why. It was not strategy. Not at first. It was simply that there had never been a reason to bring it up. Derek never asked about the estate details. He had the house. That was what he wanted. The paperwork was, in his estimation, my department, the part of caring for their mother that required sitting at a table and reading things, which he had never been patient with. So I knew. And he did not. And life continued. The spare room was small. It had a window that faced the neighbor's fence and a closet with a broken rod I fixed myself with a piece of lumber from Derek's garage. I paid him $400 a month in rent. Below market, yes, but not nothing. I kept my things organized. I did not use his car or run the heat above 68 or have people over after 9. None of that mattered to Melissa. And what mattered to Melissa had a way of becoming what mattered to Derek. I watched it happen over months. The way he stopped asking how my work was going. The way he started saying when he talked about the house, we need the space, we've been thinking about the layout, as if I were a tenant whose lease was month to month and everyone knew it. The way he began to speak past me at dinner, turning to address Melissa mid-sentence. It was not hostile, exactly. It was something quieter. The slow withdrawal of consideration from someone you have decided to stop seeing as a full person. Melissa was not cruel to me directly. She was the kind of person who manages dislike through omission, not saying the wrong thing, simply not saying anything at all. She would walk into a room I was in and address only Derek, ask only Derek about his day, direct only Derek toward whatever decision was on her mind. I became furniture in those interactions. Something to navigate around without acknowledgement. I did not raise this with Derek. I told myself it was not worth the friction. In honesty, I think I was afraid of what he would say if I asked him directly whether I still belonged in that house. In my mother's blue cardigan, the one she wore every winter morning when she came downstairs to make coffee, which I had kept folded on the shelf in that small room because it still smelled faintly like her. In that cardigan, I sat on my bed some evenings and reminded myself that I had documentation, that I had Gerald's number, that I had read every page of every document our mother had signed, and that my brother had not. I found out about the plan 3 weeks before it happened. Derek was on the phone in the kitchen. I was in the hallway, coming back from the bathroom. and I heard him clearly enough. He was not trying to be quiet. He did not think I was home. "She's barely here," he said. "She works from her room. She doesn't have a lease, she doesn't have rights, and I've already looked into it. 30 days' notice is all I'm required to give in this state." 30 days. A pause. The rent she pays is nothing. The room rents for double in this market. Melissa wants to use it as an office, and honestly, I think that's the right call. It's been long enough. Another pause. Then a laugh. "She'll figure something out. That's what Nadia does. She figures things out quietly and doesn't bother anyone. She'll be fine." I stood in the hallway and listened to my brother describe me as a minor inconvenience to be relocated. The way he said it was not cruel in tone. That was almost worse. It was the flat, procedural calm of someone who had already decided the outcome and was now simply working through the logistics. I went back to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at the blue cardigan on the shelf. The 30 days never came. What came instead was Derek arriving home one Thursday evening while I was at the library using their printer. I had a work document that needed a physical copy, and the home printer was Derek's, and he changed the locks that afternoon. Both doors, front and back. He had a locksmith come. I found out because when I came home that evening, my key did not work. And when I went around to the back, that key did not work either. The 3 garbage bags were on the front step. He had packed them himself. My clothes, my laptop charger, a few books. He had not included the blue cardigan. I called his phone. He did not answer. I texted. Nothing. Melissa texted me 40 minutes later. "Derek says he's sorry it came to this. There's a women's shelter on Grover Ave if you need a place tonight." I sat on the front step of the house my mother had owned for 11 years, in the October cold, and I read that message twice. Then I called Gerald Finch. Gerald answered on the 3rd ring. I told him what had happened. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Nadia, do you still have your copies of the estate documents?" I had them on my laptop. I had scanned every page 2 years ago and uploaded them to a secure folder. "Then you have options," Gerald said. More than he knows. He explained, again, what the executor position meant. He explained that Derek's line of credit, currently carrying a balance of nearly $80,000, which I had not known until that moment, was still guaranteed in part by the estate, and that I had never been formally released from that position because Derek had never requested it and I had never volunteered it. "If you notify the bank that you are stepping down as guarantor," Gerald said, "they are required to reassess the loan. At the current balance, without estate backing, Derek will likely be in technical default within 30 days. I sat on that step for a long time after we finished the call. I want to be honest about what I felt. It was not joy. It was not the clean, bright feeling you might expect. It was something more complicated, a kind of grief that the situation had come to this, that my brother had looked at me on that front step, in those garbage bags, and seen nothing worth a conversation. It was also a very clear decision. I was staying at a friend's apartment. Her name was Ruth. She had a pull-out sofa and she made me tea, and she did not ask me many questions. In Ruth's kitchen, at 11:30 that night, I wrote a formal email to the loan officer at Hartwell Community Bank. I identified myself as executor of the Carol Westbrook estate. I stated that I was providing written notice of my intent to withdraw the estate's guarantee from the commercial line of credit held by Derek Westbrook. I attached the executor documents. I cited the relevant section Gerald had sent me in a follow-up email an hour earlier. I submitted the form. Then I put my laptop away and went to sleep on Ruth's pull-out sofa. And at 6 in the morning, Derek's bank called him. I did not know what the bank said to him. I was asleep. Ruth's apartment had good curtains, and I slept better than I had in weeks. What I know is that Derek called me 7 times between 6 and 7 in the morning. I saw the missed calls when I woke up at 8. I did not call back. Gerald called me instead. The bank had already been in contact with him. Apparently, Derek had listed our mother's estate as a reference on the original loan documents, and Gerald's firm was on record. Gerald told me that the bank had placed Derek's account under review and had requested a meeting within 5 business days. He'll need to either secure alternative collateral or begin a repayment conversation, Gerald said. At $80,000, that is not a small ask. What are his options? I asked. Gerald was quiet for a moment. That is his problem to sort out, Nadia, not yours. I knew that was true. I also knew Derek would not see it that way. He sent me a text at 9 that morning. It was long. It accused me of sabotage, of vindictiveness, of planning this for months. It used language I will not repeat here. At the end of it, he wrote, "You are destroying everything Mom built. You should be ashamed." I read it. I did not respond. Our Aunt Patrice called me that afternoon. She was our mother's younger sister, the family member who had always been closest to neutral, and I had always trusted her more than I trusted most people. She had heard from Derek. She had heard his version of events, which I gathered had not included the garbage bags or the women's shelter text. "He says you pulled the loan guarantee without any warning," Patrice said. "He says it came out of nowhere. He changed the locks while I was at the library," I said. "He packed my things in garbage bags. He did not answer his phone." Silence on her end. "Then he didn't mention that." "No," I said. I did not expect that he would. Patrice asked me what I was going to do. I told her I was going to consult with Gerald and that I had not made any decisions beyond the notification I had already submitted. "Nadia," she said, "is there any way to walk this back? He's your brother." I thought about the blue cardigan, the one he had not included in the garbage bags. Whether that was an oversight or something deliberate, I did not know. I knew only that it was still in that room, on that shelf, and I was not. "He is my brother," I said. "And he left me on a front step in October with 3 garbage bags and did not answer his phone." Patrice did not call back that day. The reversal came 4 days later. I was at Ruth's when Gerald called me with a new development. Derek had hired an attorney, a small local firm, and they had sent a letter to Gerald's office claiming that my withdrawal of the estate guarantee constituted a breach of fiduciary duty as executor, and that Derek was prepared to seek damages. My stomach dropped when Gerald told me. "Is that a valid claim?" I asked. "No," Gerald said, with a flatness that steadied me. "Your authority as executor is unambiguous. You exercised a legitimate right. There is no fiduciary duty to maintain a guarantee in perpetuity when the estate settlement is complete. His attorney knows this. This is a pressure move, Nadia. He is hoping you will reverse the notification to make it go away." "I am not going to do that," I said. "I did not think you would," Gerald said. Then we wait. I want to tell you that waiting was easy. It was not. There is nothing comfortable about knowing that a legal letter exists with your name in it, even when you are in the right. I went to work every day from Ruth's pull-out sofa documentation work for a company that had no idea any of this was happening, and in the evenings I sat with Ruth and we watched whatever she had on, and I told myself the same thing each night. The documentation is real. The authority is real. The decision was lawful. Ruth, for her part, was the kind of friend who does not say much but says it at exactly the right moment. On the 4th night, when I had been quiet through most of dinner, she said, "You know what I notice about you? You never lost your temper. Not once." I thought about that for a long time. Not because it was a compliment, but because it was true, and I had not fully registered it until she named it. I had not been angry in the way that makes people reckless. I had been angry in the way that makes people precise. And then I would sleep, and in the morning I would do it again. The attorney's letter went unanswered by Gerald's firm for the permitted response window. When they did respond, it was a single page. Gerald said it was the most efficient letter his firm had sent in years. It stated, simply, that the executor had acted within all applicable authority, that no breach had occurred, and that any legal action pursued on those grounds would be defended fully. Derek's attorney did not follow up. But Derek was not done. And what happened next was the part I had not fully prepared for. He called a family meeting. That is what Patrice told me. That Derek had asked the family to gather at her house the following Sunday, and that she thought I should be there. He wants to talk, Patrice said. All of us together. I considered not going. Ruth told me I did not owe anyone a room to perform my forgiveness in. She was right about that. But I thought about my mother, about the way she had always believed that silence in a family grew into a wall, and I went. There were 7 of us in Patrice's living room that Sunday. Derek and Melissa were on the couch. 2 cousins sat near the window. Patrice's husband was in the kitchen doorway. I sat in the armchair nearest the door, which I chose deliberately. Derek spoke first. He had prepared. I could tell by the way he held his hands. Folded. Controlled. The way people hold themselves when they have rehearsed. He said that the family was in crisis because of a financial decision I had made in anger. He said that the business he had built was the only thing keeping him stable after the grief of losing their mother. A grief that, he said, he had largely borne alone. He said that he had made a mistake in how he handled the housing situation, and he acknowledged that. But what Nadia did, he said, threatens everything I've spent 5 years building. And I think as a family, we have to ask her to step back from this. He looked at me. Everyone in the room looked at me. One of my cousins, a man named Roy, who I had not spoken to in 3 years, said, Nadia, at some point, family has to come before a principle. I let the room go quiet. I let it sit there for a moment before I spoke. He packed my clothes in garbage bags, I said. He changed the locks while I was at the library. He did not answer his phone. His girlfriend texted me the address of a women's shelter. Nobody looked at Melissa. Melissa looked at her own hands. I have not done anything that is not within my legal authority, I continued. I have not taken his money. I have not called anyone. I sent a notification to a bank about a document that I had every right to act on. What he does with that information is between him and his lender. Roy started to speak again. I held up one hand. No, I said. I am not angry. I am not performing. I am telling you what happened, and I am telling you that I will not be withdrawing the notification. Derek's face did not change. His hands, folded in his lap, tightened slightly. Mom would not have wanted this, he said. That landed. I will not pretend it did not. But I thought about what our mother had actually done. The careful hours she had spent with Gerald, the pages she had signed, the fact that she had named me executor, not because she expected conflict, but because she knew I would read every line and understand it. Mom named me executor, I said. She trusted me with the paperwork because she knew I would take it seriously. I took it seriously. I stood up. I am not your enemy, Derek, but I am not your guarantee. Either. Not anymore. I picked up my coat and I left Patrice's house. Nobody followed me to the car. Patrice texted me that evening, just 3 words, I understand now. I did not respond to the text. Not that night. What I did instead was call Gerald and tell him I was ready for whatever came next. What came next arrived faster than I expected. Hartwell Community Bank scheduled a loan review meeting with Derek for the following Tuesday. Gerald had advised me that I did not need to attend. The bank was not my concern at this point. I had submitted my documentation, notified them of my withdrawal, and done everything required of me. What happened in that meeting was Derek's to navigate. But Gerald also told me that the bank had sent a secondary request to the estate file. They wanted confirmation that my executor status was current and that the notification I had submitted was valid. Gerald handled that request. He sent them a certified copy of the probate court order naming me executor and a letter from his firm confirming the legitimacy of the guarantee withdrawal. The bank meeting was on a Tuesday morning. I was at Ruth's apartment, working. I had a deadline on a documentation update for a warehouse system my company had just rolled out, And I spent most of that morning doing the work I always did. Careful, quiet, thorough. Derek called me at noon. I answered this time. He was not angry. That surprised me. His voice was flat in a way I had not heard before, not controlled like in Patrice's living room, but hollowed out, like a room after the furniture has been removed. The bank is calling in 40% of the outstanding balance, he said. They need partial repayment within 60 days, or they move to a reduced credit line with new terms. I said nothing. $40,000, he said. I don't have $40,000, Nadia. I let the silence hold for a moment. Outside Ruth's window, a car alarm went off down the street and then stopped. I know, I said. How am I supposed to make payroll? He said, and it was not quite a question. He had 3 employees. I had met all of them at a company barbecue the previous summer. A quiet man named Pete, who operated the mulching equipment. 2 younger brothers named Corey and Anton, who did the heavy planting. I thought of them briefly. Derek, I said, I need to ask you something. When you packed those bags, my books, my charger, my work things, did you pack my mother's blue cardigan? The one that was on the shelf in my room? A pause, a long one, longer than I expected. No, he said quietly. Why not? Another pause. I don't know, he said. I left it. I believe him. I believe he left it without knowing why. The way people sometimes spare the one thing that proves the human part of them is still there even when the rest has gone wrong. I am going to ask Gerald to send you a proposal, I said. If you are willing to talk, not through attorneys, not in a family meeting, just the 2 of us. I think there is a path through this. But I need you to understand something first. What? I was not living off your goodwill. I was paying rent in the house our mother left you. I was doing my job. I was not a burden. And I need you to say that you understand the difference before we talk about anything else. The silence this time was the longest yet. You weren't a burden, Derek said. I said that because Melissa... He stopped. I said it because it was the easiest thing to say. And I was wrong. I did not forgive him in that moment. Forgiveness is not a switch. It does not flip on the first honest sentence a person manages after months of the opposite. But something in me, the part that had sat on that front step in October cold, the part that had slept on Ruth's sofa and read every document twice, that part let go of something it had been holding tight. Gerald will call you tomorrow, I said. I hung up. I went to pick up the blue cardigan that afternoon. Derek was not home. Melissa opened the door. She did not say anything when I walked past her to the small room at the back of the house. She did not follow me in. The cardigan was exactly where I had left it. On the shelf, folded, I held it for a moment. Cedar and cold cream. Then I tucked it under my arm and walked back out. Melissa was standing in the hallway. I should not have sent that text, she said, about the shelter. No, I said, you should not have. I left without turning around. Gerald and Derek spoke the following week. The proposal was straightforward. Derek would take out a personal loan to cover the balance the bank required. Gerald would formalize the estate closure and remove me from the guarantee position permanently. Derek would sign an acknowledgement of the prior arrangement, not as an apology, just as a record that I had held a legal position and exercised it lawfully. It was not elegant. Most real resolutions are not. They are paperwork and phone calls and signatures on things that most people will never read. There is no climactic room in the legal resolution of a family financial dispute. There is just Gerald's assistant emailing PDF attachments and Derek signing them, and a file being marked closed in a cabinet somewhere in a building you will never visit. Derek signed everything Gerald sent him. In the weeks that followed, Patrice mentioned in passing, on a phone call about a holiday gathering she was planning, that Derek and Melissa were no longer together. She said it quietly, without elaboration, and I did not ask for any. I went to the holiday gathering. Derek and I sat in Patrice's dining room and passed dishes to each other and spoke about ordinary things. The weather, a repair her husband was making to the back deck. We did not speak about the locks or the bags or the bank. We were not ready for that conversation, and we both knew it, and so we did the small version of family instead. Showing up. Passing the dishes. He also, and Gerald mentioned this as a small footnote, almost an afterthought, wrote me a check for 3 months of rent overpayment. He said he had looked back at the comparable rentals in Hartwell and realized what I had been paying was below his own costs, and that he wanted to correct it. I deposited the check. I did not call to thank him. We are not there yet, Derek and I. We are somewhere in the long, quiet space between a wound and whatever grows over it. I think of our mother sometimes when I think about what I did. I think about the hours she spent with Gerald, the pages she signed, the way she trusted me with the careful work. She did not know this particular situation would arise. But she knew me. She knew I would read what I was given. She knew I would not act in haste and would not act in cruelty. What I did was not revenge. I want to be clear about that. I did not make a phone call to damage my brother. I made a phone call to protect myself, to assert the one thing I had that he could not take when he changed those locks. I had done the reading. I had kept the documents. And when the moment came, I used what I had, not to hurt him, but to make him see me. That is the difference. Revenge wants the other person to suffer. What I wanted was to stop being invisible. There is a thing that happens when someone has underestimated you for long enough. You begin to wonder if they are right. You begin to fold your own assessment of yourself smaller and smaller until it fits inside the story they are telling about you. Sitting on that front step in October, I came very close to believing my brother's version. The documentation did not let me. My mother's cardigan is folded on a new shelf now, in an apartment I rent with my own name on the lease, in a building with a good window and no broken closet rods. Some mornings I come downstairs and I can almost smell it from across the room, cedar and cold cream, and I think about the woman who wore it every winter morning to make coffee, and how carefully she had prepared for a future she would not be there to see. She trusted me with the paperwork. I did not let her down. Tell me this. Has anyone in your life ever dismissed you as though you had nothing, only to find out they had never taken the time to understand what you were actually holding? I would like to know your story.